done is the room she was found in obviously was secured by the police. That room is going to be videotaped. There's going to be still photos taken of her body and the room itself. And then what will happen is there'll be I believe, hundreds of police interviews of people who were very close to her. They're going to have to find out if, sadly to say, if this was a suicide, a homicide, an accidental death. And the only way you find these things out is through interviews. Now, there'll also be forensics teams who will be coming in, and, of course, the medical examiner will do some chemical analysis of blood and fluids of the body. So there'll be an extensive investigation by the police in all facets to find out exactly what happened. It's going to be pretty extensive.
We're joined now with A.J. Hammer and Jane Velez Mitchell joining us in L.A. A.J.'s in New York. And, guys, first let's start with A.J. The reaction that you had when you heard the news last night that Whitney Houston had passed.
Well, it was shock, and I defy you to find anybody who wasn't simply stunned by this news, particularly at the hotel where the pre-Grammy party that Clive Davis of Arista Records throws every year. This is a Grammy tradition. I've had the great honor of being at that party, and as much of a fixture as Clive is at that party is his protege, Whitney Houston. He's responsible for her career, and the fact that she would pass away on this night and on the eve of the Grammy Awards, absolutely stunning. And I'm certain, Jane, you had the same reaction.
Well, I have to say that the sun is coming up here in Los Angeles, and the Staples Center is behind me, and I just want to show you, here are all the tents. Take a look at them. All the tents for this biggest night in the music industry. And a pall has obviously been cast, and now there is just a tragic sense here when normally there is joy. Anytime you're associated with music, there's a sense of joy. And I have to tell you, AJ, that I wasn't quite shocked is the word that I would use. As a recovering alcoholic myself, I don't necessarily have a sense of shock when somebody who has a history of addiction passes. I have tremendous sadness, but it does happen so often. We don't know what the cause of her death is, and I'm not saying it's connected, but that always is the first thing that comes to mind. That was the first thing that came to my mind when I heard of this, and I'm just going to be honest. It was, oh, Whitney Houston, and then, of course, I immediately remembered Whitney Houston's history, and I immediately remembered her infamous interview with Diane Sawyer in 2002, and I just said, this is sad, this is very sad, and there but for the grace of God go I and so many other people. And the reason I have to be real about it is that we don't know the cause of death, but in general, this is a crisis in our country, and I don't think we can gloss over it in terms of just ignoring that aspect of the story. It is part and parcel of the story, and we're going to have to see how it plays out. You and I have been talking about Thursday night and the conflicting reports about how she was doing Thursday night. There's video of her singing, and she was singing at this pre-Oscar bash in Hollywood, and she seemed wonderful on stage and singing and vibrant. Then there are photographs that show her leaving, and she seemed, according to some people, a little bit off. So we don't know, but that's obviously part of the puzzle that we're going to have to put together.
And I hate to interrupt you, Jane, but we have on the phone right now Jennifer Holliday. She's a recording artist herself and a longtime friend of Whitney Houston with Arista Records. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Your emotions this morning. Hey, this has got to be the toughest morning of your life.
The toughest morning, but yet one of the toughest nights. I am in San Diego, and I performed last night with the San Diego Symphony, and I did not find out until 2 hours before my show what had happened, and I tell you, my stomach, everything, I just dropped to the floor. But I had to think of my audience, of course, and we are trained to must go on with the show. That is how we are trained. And it was very hard as I walked into the Symphony Hall and to see an empty stage with the light and the grand piano there waiting for a show. And I thought about, of course, I Will Always Love You, which was filmed at the Apollo, and the empty stage and her sitting there. And I just thought about it, and then I just said, okay, I've got to sing this for her tonight. And so it's been quite devastating for us all.
Jennifer, we don't have a cause of death at this point, but you being a friend of Whitney Houston's, how has she been over the last few years, knowing the fact that she's battled addictions in the past?
Well, for me, in terms of her addiction, I don't know in terms of where her recovery was, but where she and I talked the most was the recovery of her voice. I was really wanting so much to help her with that. And Dr. Drew said this earlier about the pressure of having that great voice. And when I looked at that film of the Kelly Price thing, and her voice wasn't there, and then she was going to have to sing later, I can imagine the fright. Even if you sing before thousands of people or a few hundred people, if your instrument is not there, and for myself, and I can't compare myself with her in terms of superstardom or even kind of voice, but what I can compare is the pressure of having to be wonderful each time you appear and what people used to have you sound like. Fortunately for me, my instrument is intact. 30 years later from Dreamgirls, yes, I can still sing and belt the notes. It took a lot of discipline, but for her to mentally adjust, it was hard for her. She would go, Jenny, they're not going to love me sounding like this. And I was like, well, we can just adjust the keys. We can try to find another way. You can be have a new thing in a different range. But mentally, it just took out. And when I saw that thing of hers with Kelly Price, that must have sent her into a reel, because she must have known I sound just okay. And to have to be able to perform again later, it must have just really sent her mentally into a different place.
Jennifer, it's A.J. Hammer in New York City, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I know, obviously, she was a longtime friend of yours, and I know you guys had such a mutual admiration society going on, deep roots in gospel. But before Whitney Houston came on the scene, your voice was the one that everybody saw as the one they wanted to aspire to be like, the benchmark, if you will. Whitney really did go on throughout the late 80s and 90s to become the gold standard with that vocal quality and the passion she brought to every lyric, didn't she?
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. But what also, though, she really had so much other great talent around her that she admired and acknowledged. As you heard Chaka Khan earlier say, Whitney said to her, come be on the video with me, because I'm doing I'm Every Woman because you are so wonderful. And that's the way she was with me. I'm singing I Am Changing in my show because of you, and I want you to know that I love you. I mean, she and I had a fight one time. She wouldn't even let me stay mad at her. That's why it was so hard for her with that fighting with Bobby Brown and stuff. It just wasn't a natural state for her to have that much tension and fighting. She wasn't even that deep. She didn't have a lot of opinions on hardly anything. You know, so it's kind of like this was a lot for her, and she admired other people and let them know. She was very giving, very loving, very warm, and she wouldn't mind letting you know. She wouldn't mind letting you know how she felt.
Yeah, Jennifer, I was speaking with CNN entertainment correspondent Nichelle Turner, and she said she was speaking to somebody from the music industry who said that she ran into Whitney Houston 4 days ago at the throat doctor. Does that dovetail with what you were just telling us?
It does, and that's why I'm trying to tell you. And I can tell you that the pressure of having to stand and have people hear you as you were before, it can be more devastating, I think, than being hit by a car. Because